Hello, Valentina. Okay, Saw X's soundtrack slaps, dude. Hi, if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about my favorite scenes from horror movies that I've already seen, and if I haven't seen a specific horror movie, I may do a reaction video on it. Saw X takes place in between 1 and 2, but I advise that anybody who's never seen the Saw movies and plans on watching them for the first time and is wondering, hey, what movies should I watch before Saw X? I advise you watch Saw 1, 2, 3, and 4. I know it's a lot of movies to watch before Saw X. Now let's start the favorite scenes list, shall we? Now, I'm not sure if this is cheating because it's not an actual scene in the movie, but if you didn't know, Lionsgate used to do this red gear looking aesthetic before showing the horror film, and they stopped a while ago. I don't know how long ago they stopped, but they haven't done it in years. So they brought it back for Saw X, and that's why it's one of my favorite scenes.
How much time do I have?
Months, at best. Retire. But sometimes those who accept their fate have an easier time.
Easier time? What? So your advice to me is to die easy?
I've already said this in Saw 2. I love how John doesn't take anybody's shit. He tells you how it is, and like we saw in Saw 2, he loves to roast people, alright? This scene also intrigued me all because of Saw 6 and the themes of that film. One of the biggest things I love about John Kramer is his views on healthcare.
Good choice.
I thought this was such a clever way to show the viewer how the mind of John Kramer works. The performance of this trap is not a favorite scene of mine because I don't like anything that has to do with eyes, alright? That very first scene in Saw 2, not it for me. I either skip it or I'm just not watching the screen as it's playing. But I love how afterwards we find out that this was just a scene he played out in his head and it actually didn't happen. And what's crazy to me is that his whole career was just an architect and an engineer. Like two jobs that you don't really suspect anything sinister to come out of, and yet John Kramer exists.
Can I get a blueberry scone, please? Oh, they look. Thank you.
I only recently started following Jiggy Saw Girl on TikTok. If you guys don't know who Jiggy Saw Girl is, she is like one of the biggest Saw fans out there, and her whole page is full-on Saw content. I know she talks about other horror movies, but her favorite franchise specifically is Saw. So if you are a big Saw fan, I highly recommend following her account on TikTok because she's got some really cool Saw videos. It's so inspiring to see a big fan of any franchise, really, to end up in a movie that is canon within their favorite franchise. That's crazy to me and so inspiring. Because she's literally just a person who owns a really big Saw account, and she ended up in a Saw film. So inspiring. It makes you think, okay, that could be me one day. Now, before we move on to the next scene, I want to talk about the setup of this story first. So, if you've seen past Saw movies and even the trailer, you know right off the bat that these people that John contacts to get his cancer cured are a scam. And I mean, even if you haven't seen the trailer, it's kind of an obvious thing for a Saw fan to realize because of the events that happened in Saw 3. I noticed that a big complaint about this film was the slow pacing of the beginning of the movie. Because it does take almost an hour before they get into the traps. And I get it. When you watch a Saw film, you're expecting trap after trap after trap. So I understand being a Saw fan and just being used to seeing trap after trap after trap and being like, what's going on? How come I only got to see one trap and it wasn't even a real trap? Like, I get it. I hear you. And I also found it really refreshing to receive a storyline instead of just trap after trap after trap. I thought it was a really great way to grab the viewer's attention and bring them into this story and ease them into the chaos that they're going to have to be ready for later on. Also, this setup really does explain why John Kramer is so brutal later on in Saw 2 especially, and Saw 3. Like, you can just tell with the way he acted in Saw 2 how he was just roasting Detective Matthews and just not giving a crap about anybody.
Ladies, the library is open, okay?
Alright, one more thing before we move on to the next scene. That yellow tent in Mexico? Why? Unnecessary. Alright, so I've been to Ecuador, which is also in South America, and I can tell you guys that the air is not yellow. It's definitely not yellow down there. I've seen way more pollution here than I have in a different country, so I don't know what the yellow tint was all about, but how about we not?
What do you do? Like for a living?
I've been a civil engineer and an architect most of my life. Now I have a few hobbies. I help people overcome inner obstacles, help them make positive changes in their lives.
Like a life coach, yeah?
Something like that.
I can't think of anything more important than helping others.
I very much like this scene because we get John Kramer talking about his career and his hobbies, and the way he words his hobbies is just so funny to me.
How do you say pull? Pull.
Jala.
Hala.
Gracias.
Funny how John just talked about his careers, and then we get to see him in action as an engineer. Love that. In the first Saw film, we did see that John had mapped out the bathroom scene because that was his architect side taking over. And here we got to see him use his engineering skills. I'm pretty sure we've seen him make traps in the past as well. And of course, we've seen him do diagrams and such for the traps. But I liked the little hints here. Like, hey, remember his job? Yeah, that was his job. Also, it's just so funny to me how John is painted as this sweet old man, but he's a killer. So it's really weird feelings that we're receiving throughout this film. Because we all know the brutal things that he's done throughout these films, and yet here you feel for him and you enjoy watching him. Oh, he's helping that little boy with his bike, but he also kills people. Like, what? I will tell you, it makes it so much easier for the viewer to lean on John's side throughout the film.
Have a good life, John.
I got goosebumps both times seeing this scene. Again, I knew that it was a scam on the first watch, but I still got goosebumps. It was that Saw X soundtrack. I'm telling you, it was so good. But also just watching the hope leave John Kramer's eyes and then just be filled with rage and disappointment. For the very first time, I was actually really excited to see these people in the traps.
Hello, Diego. Or should I call you Dr. Cortez? I'd like to play a game.
Man, oh man, when it was revealed that the taxi driver was the surgeon, I was like, you effed up. Like, he did the actual con on John. I was very impressed with the way John pinpointed all these people that were a part of the scam and figuring out whose trap should belong to who.
Detective, I could use your assistance in locating some people that are in need of our services.
I was very excited when I heard him say detective on the phone because I was like, oh, that's Hoffman, because he wasn't in the trailer like at all, and it was just a really great surprise. Like, I was expecting Amanda to be in the movie, but I didn't expect Hoffman. I also just love how he just says detective. He doesn't even say Hoffman or anything, just to get the viewer like with their ears up, like, wait a minute, wait a minute.
This is my associate, Amanda.
Get some rest, Cecilia. You're going to fucking need it.
Again, I already knew Amanda was going to be in the movie, but I loved the way she revealed herself just in front of the car, spotlights on her, you know, headlights, but they were basically spotlights, hitting Shawnee Smith. She takes that mask off and she's like, sup. Like, loved it. Loved that execution. Now, when we get to the people that are in the traps, I do like the way they're acting. I think the only one that I felt a little bit of remorse for was Gabriella, but even Matteo and Valentina, they were acting very scummy while they were sitting in their traps. She didn't even apologize for being a part of the scam. She was just like, I'm gonna get you. And I think it was a really great choice to do that.
This is not right.
Not right. A lecture in moral decency from you.
I just love the back and forth between John and Cecilia about morality when both of them are just completely screwed in the head. Two wrongs don't make a right. But when you compare their moralities, I feel like Cecilia giving people hope and them just dying afterwards, like she lied straight through that, is slightly worse than John placing people in a trap, a death trap, and with the possibility of surviving. And when they survive, they're free to go. I mean, at least he's got that going for him. It's splitting hairs, basically. But if we're comparing moralities, Cecilia is worse than John by a landslide. And plus, if you really think about it, Cecilia takes really innocent, sick people and ruins their lives. John takes people that are already messed up, whether they're criminals or they're drug addicts. That's the people he goes for his traps. Splitting hairs, like I said.
I'm not the one addicted to drugs, am I?
What?
Drugs are as vicious as they are powerful.
Gabriella had her own free will. And if you can't handle this, how will you handle the rest of our work?
This was so interesting because we see the way John feels about people who abuse drugs, and he completely believes that the person had free will, which they did, and they get addicted to the drug. But he doesn't really care about how deep it gets and how addiction actually works. He just thinks that once you start doing it, you're bad. And that's why Amanda was placed in the trap. That's why Gabriella's put in the trap, also for scamming, of course, but she also abused drugs. So, and because Amanda has firsthand experience with addiction. So she feels for Gabriella, like really deeply feels for her, because she sees herself in her. And John takes that as a weakness, as a form of weakness from Amanda. And I just love that we got this background dialogue to solidify the events that happened in the third Saw film. But then again, I feel like Gabriella hurt John the most because she acted as if her life was saved by Cecilia, and she even gifted him that tequila and everything. Like, it felt more personal with Gabriella. So I see why John is being as hard as he is, because he probably too sees a little bit of Amanda and Gabriella and really wants Gabriella to live through her trap and overcome this. The way the perspective is shown from each side is so interesting. Oh, time for the leg scene again. No, I will never rewatch that scene again. I will most likely just be dancing, just like that, throughout the entire scene, looking anywhere but the screen, alright? But I will say, the blood in this film Oh, it's disgustingly real. Disgustingly real. Bloody disgustingly real. I love the practical effects in this film for sure. Practical effects was just perfect. That blood, spot on, made me sick to my stomach. Alright, I'll also talk about the intestine scene. Neither of these scenes are my favorite, by the way. Leg scene, intestines, no, not my favorite scenes. I only like the leg scene because of that soundtrack. For the intestine scene, I just like how clever they were trying to be and be like, there we go, we got rope now. But it's like, whoa, okay, that's so twisted. I can't believe your mind just went straight to that as the idea. Alright, Cecilia. But I gotta give her props, that was pretty clever.
Why don't you go and prepare Gabriella for the next game? You want me to do it?
No, but the anesthesiologist is next.
The assertiveness from Amanda is so fun to watch in this movie. She's so witty with everybody that she talks to in this film, I've noticed. Like, we're not doing Gabriella next, we're doing Matteo next. I don't care. She's trying to show John, hey, I can take over for you, but at my own limits. As twisted as you are, Amanda, I'm glad you know your limits. I don't need to explain this. Billy the Puppet, yeah, that's a favorite scene of mine. And we're just gonna slide past Matteo's very gnarly trap because this also made me squeamish. Actually, every trap in here made me feel squeamish. Except for Cecilia's trap. Her trap did not make me feel squeamish. By the way, I want to point out Cecilia's trap is so much easier than Gabriella's. Even though everybody's saying Gabriella's trap was the easiest. No, Cecilia's was the easiest. Skipping to Gabriella's death, Amanda's reaction was so heartbreaking to listen to, and it definitely helps with the foreshadowing of Saw 3. I love how this dialogue is perfect for the placement that it is in this franchise. Putting it between 1 and 2 was so weird to me, but now it makes a lot of sense.
The boy is innocent.
Exactly. So if you let him die, it's all on you.
This scene blew my mind. A child being placed in a trap has never happened before. And I am shocked and impressed that Saw X went there. Good on you, Saw. And that actor for Carlos? Amazing little Scream King. I hope to see him in more horror. Go Carlos.
It's activated by the subject.
Because you wouldn't be responsible for killing anyone, would you? Fucking hypocrite. Come on, John. Do the scary voice. I'd like to play a game.
Ugh, Cecilia. Over here mimicking John and saying his most famous line, but I very much enjoyed that she was mocking him. I just love how subtly this movie addresses the "Jigsaw's not a killer" quote that we keep hearing throughout the movies. Because basically, this movie's saying, nah, he's a killer.
Carlos. No hala. Comprende? No hala.
And it was very obvious that the only word that he's learning was going to be used later on. But I still liked how he was able to communicate to Carlos how to use the trap. It is a coincidence, but I liked it, okay? I love the way John was protecting Carlos in this trap because it really helped us as the viewer really sympathize for John. It was also so sweet how Carlos was trying to protect John in return. I'd like to see where Carlos ended up 20 years later.
You are a warrior.
I was able to
only parts of this reveal that I ended up enjoying, so that's why it's all cut up like that. It was pretty obvious that Cecilia and her boy toy weren't going to get away. I just wasn't sure how. The specific part that I enjoyed during this reveal was Mark Hoffman on the phone, because you can hear his voice, and if you're a huge fan of the franchise, or if you're a casual fan, or if you've just seen all the movies, then you know what Hoffman's voice sounds like. So when I heard his voice on the phone, I was like, that's him, that's him. And the second part of the reveal that I really liked was how the three of them were able to get out the trap, and they're just watching Cecilia and her boy toy freaking out. And then the part of the reveal that I didn't like was that Cecilia survived. Ugh. So I wonder if that's just going to be a setup for another Saw film, possibly. If it is, then okay, I'm not too mad about it because I'm excited for the future of this franchise. But again, I was just like, darn it.
Thank you, Detective.
Out of all the men to cheat, you picked John Kramer? Epic bad luck.
I want to play a game.
Alright, this scene is a mid-credit scene. You will get your Mark Hoffman scene. I just love when a franchise has fan favorites and they include those fan favorites in these films. What I wish was in this film was, spoilers for Saw 7, by the way, was Dr. Lawrence Gordon. Lawrence! I would have liked to see a scene where just John's talking on the phone just for a tiny bit, and Gordon's like, yeah, so this is how you do the surgical thing, like, for the brain part, blah, blah, like, you know, like that. Like, just a little small scene of that. And I ended up having 20 favorite scenes. I consider myself a casual fan of the Saw films, which is why I wasn't surprised that I only had about 10 or a little over 10 favorite scenes for the first two films. But I'm a bit surprised that I had this many favorite scenes in Saw X. I feel like Saw X is a great film not only for Saw fans, but for horror fans in general. Because it has everything you want in a horror film. You got story. You definitely have story. You have your gore. It was perfect, for me at least. Now, I will address, there are people who didn't think the traps were as brutal or gory, and they're over here like, oh, you're such a baby. Why did you think that those traps were so gory? You can't handle any horror. I would love to advise you guys that your version of gore isn't going to match everyone else's version of gore. I personally didn't find the traps gory, but they were very difficult for me to watch. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm not a horror fan. It doesn't mean someone else who found them super gory isn't a horror fan. If you watch a horror movie and you liked that horror movie, you're a horror fan. Alright, I said that Cecilia's trap was the easiest out of all of them. Okay, yes, I know the gas that's filling the room is literally eating their skin or something. I guess it only works if you breathe it in. I wasn't fully aware of what the heck that gas was doing, but her trap mainly was to get her head through that hole so she didn't have to breathe in the gas. And the only way to do that was to inflict death on another person. And she didn't have to hurt herself specifically. She had to hurt someone else to the brink of death. And with the way Cecilia is and how awful of a person she is, that was very easy for her to do. She's like, all right, let me just, like, that was so easy for her. Gabriella had to break her bones to avoid radiation as the radiation was hitting her. So yeah, Cecilia's trap was the easiest out of all of them, and I found that really annoying. Final thoughts. If it wasn't obvious already, this movie is perfect to me. It is one of the best Saw films to have ever came out. I'm telling you, this is for the fans. This is for horror fans. They executed the story very well. The traps were done very, very well. And I feel like even the character arcs were just so beautifully done and mapped out. We even got to see John and Amanda's relationship build up before the third film. So this film really helped us engage in their relationship and see why Amanda has so much endearment for this man, and it also helped with the events of Saw 3. And that is all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it here already, why not subscribe and join in on the horror fun? Please let me know what your thoughts on this film are. Do you have any favorite scenes? Are they similar to my list? Do you have more favorite scenes? Let me know. Bye. Oh, wait, I'm Billy the Puppet. Right.
Game over.